Welcome back. This is episode number 3 of the Clash of Cultures podcast. My name is Steven. I'm here with my dad, Kelvin. This week, we're going to talk about week eight takeaways and recaps, college game day with Deion Sanders and the HBCUs, our current college football picks, and predicting this week's upcoming games. How are you doing today, Dad?
Well, you sound so robotic. How are you doing today, Dad? Oh, it need to be more natural. No, I'm doing good. Great week of college football.
It was a great week. How about those Clemson Tigers, man? I want to go ahead and start off with let's talk about the Clemson Tigers. I want to know how you feel about them benching DJ and in an epic comeback in the fourth quarter against Syracuse.
No, so I felt like it was one of those games that even as I watched it, I felt like Clemson was going to come back. I felt like they were going to figure out a way to win, and I think that's just sometimes when you have coaches and players that have been in that situation, like Dabo has, like DJ has, like a lot of the Clemson players have. Syracuse, this is kind of new territory for them. Playing big time games, ranked games in prime time with all the lights on. Now, let me say this. They gave a valiant effort. That defense looked amazing. They put up a fight. They put up a better fight than I really thought they would have. But, you know, at the end of the day, the teams that have been there, kind of that cream rises to the top. And I think you've seen that in a number of games. Now, back to your point, the DJ for Cade benching. Now, I think Dabo's already said that DJ is the starter. He will be starting next week. However, that's a tough situation for DJ, right? Because as a Clemson fan now, it's if he has another bad half, if he has another bad quarter, the Clemson fans are going to be calling for Cade, who, you know, obviously led them back to the win.
It's hard, though. The reason why I say it's hard is because I get he didn't really lead them to a win. He only threw the ball, I think, two or three times. I think he had 2 completions for like 19 yards. He handed the ball off 18 times. I get that DJ was struggling, but I think DJ just had an off game. And I saw a quote today from Dabo that he said, They asked him why he brought Cade in the game, and he said he wasn't going to give DJ an opportunity for number 4. I think he was referring to the 4th turnover because he had 2 picks, and then he had the fumble, which I get. But I also believe that even if DJ stays in the game, we still win the game. I mean, if you would have put DJ in the situation and just said hand the ball off every play, we would have won the game as well. I mean, I don't think anything different. Now, if Cade came in and was 10 for 11 with 120 yards and a touchdown passing, I get it. He did have that big play for the 2-point conversion to go up. I want to say we went up 3. So he had that big play. But other than that, I mean, he was really just a game manager. He's a true freshman. He's obviously the future of Clemson. But I like how resilient we were. Now, I'll be the first to say the first 2 episodes I had DJ in the Heisman race.
So that's over. That is dead.
That down. But let's not act like that wasn't a great win. That team-wise, that was a great win against an undefeated Syracuse. So I mean, other than Clemson, my first takeaway from this week was the Ole Miss game. I did have LSU winning that game, but not by 25. Jalen Daniels had a big game against Ole Miss, but I thought that, I mean, they scored 21 points in the fourth quarter, which they kind of ran away with it. But I didn't think they would win by that much, but I did have them pulling off the upset against the Rebels and eventually ending their college football playoff hopes. LSU is still 6-2. They're still a team to be reckoned with. They're still probably going to get to a notable bowl game at the end of the year. Then they started off really slow again. They were on your disappointing teams. I think they turned around their season. They're 4-1 in the SEC now. So how did you feel about that game?
No, I did not see that coming. And I think just like you said, you got to give credit to LSU. Obviously, they brought in Brian Kelly this season. So there's a lot of change. Jaden Daniels at quarterback, transfers. But man, they are looking legit, right? They lost an early nail biter to Florida State. They got beat up pretty bad by Tennessee. But really, they've been in every other game. And kind of as you're building chemistry, remember LSU has lost a lot over the years, both transfer and then obviously that Joe Burrow, Chase team just kind of got dismantled with the draft. And I think they're rebuilding. So I had them on my disappointments, but now they'd probably be I don't want to say in surprises, but definitely surprises from where they were when they were on my disappointments.
And just to kind of do a little spin off of this, I want to know your thoughts on this, just because I was at work today and kind of thought about this. The only team that I could realistically see getting the only conference that I can see realistically getting a two team in is the SEC. But if you really think about this, y'all can call me crazy all you want, but in this would never happen. But how far ahead or how far high in the rankings could Wake Forest finish if they went undefeated? I mean, not undefeated, if they won out. Because right now they're number 10 and they have one loss.
Yeah.
They're 6-1 right now. So they have 5 games left. So let's say they finished 11-1. All the people above them are going to start knocking each other off. So I think they could realistically finish 7 or 8. And that's not crazy to say.
But I think the part we got to be honest with is I don't want to say conference prestige, but conference image. So as we talked about when we kind of broke down the conferences last week, we kind of said, hey, I think the ACC has a much better middle than a lot of other conferences.
They have 5 top 25 teams this week.
But ACC still has that kind of stigma, that view. And I think a one-loss ACC team doesn't beat out a one-loss SEC team. And there's probably going to be a one-loss SEC, non-SEC conference championship team. So I don't know. Wake Forest would literally have to run the table. And I don't know. Let me be honest.
I just think it's interesting.
I don't think 2 ACC teams get in.
I don't think that would ever happen. I don't think that would ever happen.
Right.
But it's food for thought, because if they're number 10 now, and I mean, if you just think about, I'm not even looking at anything. I know Alabama and Georgia, or Alabama and Tennessee, will end up playing in the conference championship game.
Yeah.
Tennessee and Georgia still have to play each other. Ohio State and Michigan still have to play each other.
Now you got to remember, though, some of those teams may not jump behind them. Right, that Ohio State-Michigan game, let's just say both teams win out going up to that game. If that is their only loss, I don't think they fall behind Wake Forest. I
don't think so. I don't think so either. But it's definitely a discussion. And I think if they win out, they're number 10 now. If they win out, I don't see them going out of the top 10. So even for them to finish, I mean, if they won the rest of their games, they're going to finish at least 7, 8, 9.
Now, obviously, their losses to Clemson. I don't know, I'm not smart enough on conferences in the ACC, but do they have a shot at being in the ACC championship still? Okay,
no, they're in our side.
So that would, I think their only chance is Clemson drops 2 games, they somehow get in the ACC championship and win the ACC championship. I think that is literally their only shot.
Well, it's tough because they play this week. They have a bye this week. They go on to play number 24 NC State, 21 North Carolina, 16 Syracuse.
Yeah, but I think NC State's on their way down. Obviously, they lost Leary for the season.
Yeah,
and they haven't looked the same since. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I would be, especially now we're talking about a one-loss team that probably isn't going to win the ACC, right? So
they wouldn't even have a chance to get in.
So with no real shot to win the ACC, to even be in a conference championship game, I don't see them getting in, especially again, if we're talking about over a one loss, let's just say Tennessee loses to Georgia and doesn't get in. I don't think Tennessee's going to drop behind them if their only loss is to Georgia, and they would have a bigger win being against the Alabama win versus Wake Forest's, whatever their best win is at that point in time.
Gotcha. For sure. So, I mean, do you have any other takeaways from last week? Anything that stand out to you?
No, I mean, like I said, I think it was really a cream rises to the top. I think my last takeaway is I think the Pac-12 just killed herself. Obviously the UCLA Oregon game, UCLA wins. I think Pac-12 has effectively, just like we said, it's hard for some of these conferences, the ACC, the Big 12, the Pac-12, it's hard to get in with a loss. And I think if you're now counting on Oregon to be the kind of the flag carrier for the conference, people are going to remember that Oregon got smacked by Georgia, right? Yeah. So it's a bad look all around for the Pac-12 when now the team that's kind of has the best chance, you would say, is a team that played an out of conference game and it wasn't close. Now, if the game was close, you say, hey, bad game, first week, yada yada. But they got smacked by Georgia. And now that makes the whole Pac-12 look down. So I think effectively the Pac-12 is out of the playoffs this year.
I still think the Pac-12 has a chance to get someone in just because they do have number 8, number 9, and number 10. So I think realistically, they just need one of those teams to run the table and then win the Pac-12 championship. But they also need a lot of chaos to happen on top of them, which it can happen because, like I said, you have a lot of those teams who still play each other. I mean, Clemson has had pretty much close games throughout the whole season, so they could lose at any point. Michigan and Ohio State, one of them are going to lose. Tennessee, Georgia, one of them are going to lose. Alabama may lose another game. So there's a lot of stuff that could happen still. So I don't think they're completely out.
I say if you take that Ohio State-Michigan game,
mm-hmm.
and let me say, it's tough, but if let's say Ohio State loses to Michigan close
mm-hmm.
in a very close game, that team may still get in over Oregon if they happen to run the conference, win the conference, because I think the taste of that Georgia loss and the way they got smacked is so bad that the Big Ten loser may get in over them.
But I think we also have to take into account these rankings aren't even the real rankings.
No, that's a fact.
This is just the AP. So they may have Oregon at number 10. You know what I mean? They may have them at 11 or 12. They may not even have Wake Forest at number 10 right now. They could be at 15. So
College Football Committee has always came in drastically different than the AP. The AP is just kind of what we use early. And then when the College Football Committee releases their poll, then all the rest of the polls don't matter anymore.
Definitely. But moving on to
just make sure you see Brutus.
Relax. Moving on to our next topic. This is the first time we've really talked about it this year or in this podcast, which would be College Game Day. And College Game Day, is it in Jackson State or is it in?
So they're playing Southern. And I think they're at Jackson State. The first time in a very, very long time that they're visiting HBCU for College Game Day.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And we kind of had this conversation last week talking about if Deion would ever leave. I stand on what I said. I don't think he'll leave no matter what. I think he's drawing so much attention, and I think he likes it. I think if he goes to, a bigger school, I think the only realistic school he'll go to is Florida State. I think that's the best chance of him coming to Division I, a big time Power Conference school, a Power 5 conference school. I just don't see him leaving. I think he's liking so much, and he likes being the quote unquote underdog. And he's going to start getting a lot of recruits. And I think eventually, I don't know how it works. I know Oklahoma and Texas are going to the SEC soon, and USC, UCLA. What if they just moved into Division I?
It's hard at HBCU. First of all, I don't know if they have the enrollment to go to a Division I conference. So let me say this. I think there's a couple things that have to come into play when we talk about what Deion Sanders is doing and the thoughts of him going to a bigger program. One, and the good thing for Jackson State is really Deion has money. Mm-hmm. So it's not like it's a money thing where, hey, if somebody came and said, hey, let me back up the truck and bring you in, it's not like oh, I need $1 million. Deion is, I'm sure, pretty nicely compensated through his NFL career and other endorsements. He still has and still does endorsement deals now. It
is in Jackson State, by the way.
And the other part of that is simply what you said, right? The prestige and the ability to draw eyes to HBCUs. First, that's what you got to love about Deion Sanders going there, right? We talked about Travis Hunter going to Jackson State. We talked about, and I think Jackson State, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but they got another four-star receiver.
Oh, I don't know who it is.
And I seen, as I kind of keep up with Ohio State recruiting, there's a number of kids that have released the top 10 that have Jackson State in their top 10. So obviously he's drawing attention. Look, Deion Sanders is probably one of the biggest names in football, period, living right now. So when Deion Sanders comes to your living room, you're going to listen, especially if you're a DB, right? If a guy like Travis Hunter, if I can learn from Deion Sanders, one of the best to do it, obviously I'm going to listen to that opportunity. And then the attention he's bringing HBCUs, which have been historically underfunded. And we can talk about some of the great players that come out of HBCUs. Walter Payton, Michael Strahan, T.O. We could go down the list. But the fact that he's not just doing it for Jackson State, but he's bringing attention to a lot of these athletes and a lot of these schools. And kudos to him. I hope he doesn't leave. But the thing is, if Deion wants to coach at a high level and wants to really see how great of a coach he is, he's going to have to take a big program, and then he's going to need that funding and that ability to go recruit at a high level.
So I have a question. Who do you think wins this game?
Jackson State, because Jackson State's the only HBCU team I know anything about.
Because I'm looking at just kind of the numbers, and the Southern team does not look bad at all. The quarterback is decent. They run the ball. I mean, they've won 4 out of their last 5. They're 5-2.
Well, Jackson State's 7-0, and I know
7-0.
Deion's son, Shador, I think is his name, plays quarterback for the team, and yeah, he's putting up pretty good numbers. Like I said, I'm just happy for the spotlight that both Jackson State and Southern are going to get. At the end of the day, it's a net win, right? Hopefully people tune in, watch the game, and hopefully scouts tune in and watch this game. And some of these kids that may have not gotten a chance without Deion Sanders being at Jackson State, maybe get eyes on them, and maybe they get drafted.
Definitely. Moving on to our next topic, our next segment, we're going to do a contender or pretender segment, and I came up with 5 teams. And I'm gonna ask my dad how he feels about them, if he feels they can contend for a championship, or if he feels they're frauds.
Okay.
So just to kind of go back to the Pac-12 talk, is Oregon a contender or a pretender?
So just like I said, it's tough. It's tough. I think the taste that everybody has in their mouth from the Georgia game is going to haunt them. I think they're going to have a tough time getting into the playoff. I'm going to call them a pretender for right now.
Okay, I'm going with a contender for Oregon because I'm looking at their schedule. They did lose to Georgia big, but they play Cal this week. I think they'll handle Cal. Then they play Colorado. I think they'll handle Colorado. UW will be a pretty good game. And then they play against Utah at home in Eugene. Yep. So that's going to be a decider for them. And they play Oregon State. And I think if they run the table and win the Pac-12, I think they have a legitimate shot to contend for a playoff. Okay, I'll put it this way. They'll be in the playoff if they run the table. But, I mean, as you saw against Georgia, I don't think they could win the playoff, win it all. But I think they're a contender.
The thing I think they have going for them, I think the Pac-12 this year went to the 2 best teams playing the Pac-12 championship. So if they did run the table, and let's just say USC runs the table, and now we're talking about 2 top 10 teams, and they were able to beat USC as well, again, maybe. But for right now, I'm going to call them pretenders.
For sure. And also the reason why I say that is because, I mean, if you look at Clemson's 8-0, if the season shakes out how it looks like it's going to shake out, they'll play North Carolina in the ACC title game. Right now, North Carolina is 6-1. They're ranked number 21. But North Carolina still has to go play at Wake Forest. They still have to play against NC State. So they may lose a game. Yeah. So if Oregon or USC, if they run the table and whoever wins that game, it's going to be a better win than Clemson's championship game over in the ACC. Right. Obviously, Clemson would be undefeated at that point, assuming. So that'll be kind of a conversation to be had. But moving on, since we talked about them, is Clemson a contender or pretender?
So I think Clemson is going to get into the college football playoff. Okay. I think they'll run the table. I think they'll win the SEC. I'm going to call them a pretender, though, because I don't think they can beat any of the other big team, other conferences, big teams, right? Whether that be Georgia, whether that be Ohio State. I think they could beat teams in the Big 12. I think they could beat teams in the Pac-12. But when we kind of boil down the teams I think that have a legitimate shot at winning the national championship, I would put Clemson on the back end of that, right? I'd probably have them at 4th or 5th if I had to guess teams that I think could legitimately win a national championship. So I think when they have to face one of those other Georgias or Ohio States or whatever, I think they'll struggle, and I think they'll lose that game.
So I think Clemson is a contender, obviously.
Of course you do, of course.
But I mean, I feel like the reason being, I would also say I have them at 4th or 5th on the list of if they can win a championship or not. But I think the reason why I say they're a contender is because we have shown that we play up to the standard whoever we're playing against. I mean, if you look at last year, it was considered a down year for Clemson. We lost to Georgia 10-3 on a pick six, and they eventually won the championship game. So I mean, I think, we had a close game against Syracuse. We had a close game against Wake Forest, and there's always other teams we have close games against. But I think tomorrow, if we lined up against Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, it would be a close game. Win or lose, it's going to be a close game. So I think with that being said, anybody in this top 6 right now, from Georgia, Ohio State, Tennessee, Michigan, Clemson, Alabama, I think we can confidently say one of them is going to win the championship. And I think Clemson can hang with anybody in the top 6. And I think we could beat anybody in the top 6. I think we could lose to anybody in the top 6. But I mean, I wouldn't lining up against any team. I'm not nervous to play anyone. I think regardless, Dabo's a good enough coach, which he showed this past week. He can adjust. We have the talent on defense to hang with pretty much anybody in the country. Even if our offense does play bad, I think our defense can carry us. So I would say they're a contender. But I agree with you. I do think they will be right now the 4th or 5th. If I had to bet money on it, I wouldn't say Clemson is a top 3 championship contending team, but they're definitely in the running right now.
Okay.
But moving on, do you feel that TCU is a contender or a pretender?
I'm gonna again, and I feel bad.
Number 7 TCU,
because I'm calling all these teams pretenders. But I've seen TCU a couple times, and again, I think the Big 12 is down. Obviously, they're beating up on Big 12, and they're not beating up on Big 12 teams, which is the other part. If they were blowing Big 12 teams out, I think I'd feel a little bit more confident in them. They're winning a lot of squeakers, and there's something to be said for that. Absolutely. But again, when we talk about contenders, I'm talking about their ability to beat Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, in this instance, Clemson, right? Do I think they line up and can play with those teams? I don't think so. So I'm going to have to call them pretenders.
This is my first pretender team. They have beaten 4 straight ranked opponents, but I truly feel like you said, if they lined up against another top team, they wouldn't be able to hang. I think their defense just isn't good enough. Big 12 is known for not playing defense.
Right.
They've given up a lot of points this season. But again, could I realistically see them in the playoff making noise? Yeah. But I think if I had to decide whether a contender or pretender against the Georgias, Alabamas, Ohio States, I would say they're a pretender, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's how I'm looking at this, right? As an Ohio State fan, if our round 1 game was TCU, I'd feel pretty confident. I'd be happy about that matchup, right? That's not a game that I'm going to be worried losing sleep over, the same way. And I guess in that way, I may have to change my answer for Clemson, right? Because I think Clemson, I would still be concerned about. I think, again, when we talk Jimmys and Joes, Clemson has the guys. It just, they don't always seem to play to that level.
Definitely. Moving on to the next one. I'm going to go first on this next one.
Okay.
The question at hand is Michigan a contender or a pretender? And I think Michigan is a pretender. I'm going to stand on what I said at the beginning of the year until they bring home a national championship. The reason being, they've been so underwhelming since Harbaugh's been there. I know they made the playoff last season. I'm pretty sure they made the playoff last season. I feel like last season was so long ago. But
they made the playoff.
Yeah, I think they are a pretender. I mean, they did have that big win against Penn State. But I think out of all the top 6 teams, so if I look at the rankings, as a Clemson fan, if I look at the rankings, out of the top 6, I probably choose to play Michigan over anybody on here, and then Tennessee. Kind of like the TCU situation. If Clemson played Michigan, I wouldn't feel like I'd wake up in the morning like a normal routine and nothing would happen. Like I feel like I wouldn't stress about it at all. Not to say they're not a good team. I think Michigan is a really good team. I think Tennessee is a really good team. But when I'm comparing Michigan to Alabama and Ohio State and Georgia and Clemson and a lot of the other teams, I don't know if they can hang with them. They haven't. I mean, yeah, they beat Penn State. That didn't really move me though. They beat them big. I get that. I think it'll be a testament this week how that win was, depending on how good Ohio State is against Penn State, because then you have a common opponent. Now, if Ohio State goes in there and wins 41-0, 41-10, 41-17, just like they did, then we can say, okay, let's look forward to the end of the year when they play each other. But if Ohio State goes in and struggles and wins 31-24, then you can kind of say, okay, Michigan handled them. So I think we'll have to see how this week goes with Penn State and Ohio State. But as of right now, I say Michigan is a pretender.
I'm going to go the opposite. And, I hate giving any kudos to the school up north. But it's only for this reason. What Michigan does, they do very well. And I know, everybody knows that they're going to run the ball, right? I don't think JJ McCaffrey is a great quarterback, but he's great for the system they have. He has the ability to get outside. They obviously have two very good running backs in Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, and they have a great offensive line. They are like an old Wisconsin team. They're going to pound the ball. They have backs that can find holes, and if they get space, they can bust. I think they're going to try to control the clock and do what they do. And in that, I think they can beat anybody. Are they the most dynamic team on this list? No. Do I have concerns about playing them? Yes, only because, like I said, if you're not tough in the trenches, they can beat you up. Now, honestly, this is a place where I think it's matchup driven, right? I think Clemson matches up very well against Michigan because Clemson plays very well in the trenches, and that's what Michigan wants to do, right? Clemson has an amazing defensive line, and Michigan needs to move people off the line. And this is where Ohio State may not, it just in a matchup situation just may not match up. I think where we are better is kind of where Michigan wants us. I think we have great DBs, but we play a 4-2-5. So we don't have great linebackers. We have decent defensive linemen. That's not really our strength, but we have a really good secondary. And I don't think Michigan's going to throw the ball on us anyway. So it's a matchup thing. So I'm going to call them contenders because if they get the right matchups and if they can fire off the ball and move people, they can beat anybody.
So just to kind of not counter it, but just to kind of get my opinion on it, I don't think if their sole hope is to run the ball down your throat, they're not beating Clemson, Alabama, or Georgia. They're not beating any of them. I haven't watched too many Ohio State games just because the timing of the Ohio State and Clemson games match up almost every game this year. And there's been other really good games. I'm going to watch this week, obviously, because it's arguably the game of the week. So I'm definitely going to watch this one. But I think they're a pretender. They could change my mind depending on how Ohio State looks this week against Penn State. For sure. The last team we're going to talk about here, I'll let you go first. Is Georgia a contender or a pretender? This was a tough one. Just because it feels like the obvious answer, but let me see what you have to say.
So I have to start with Georgia being a contender. I'm concerned about the offense. I'm concerned about the defense and how much. I mean, you lose 7 starters. It's tough to just replace that. I'm going to say almost. I want to say incomplete. Right. I need to see them play Tennessee. I need to see them play Alabama if they get to the SEC championship. I need to see them play another really good team. They may have just caught Oregon as Bo Nix is just getting there, and maybe Oregon just hadn't gelled yet. So I need to see, I think, that answer. And it's really kind of for both Tennessee and for Georgia is going to come in that Tennessee-Georgia game. I think that I will have a better understanding of who both teams are after that game. And that's tough for Tennessee because Tennessee's won some big games. I would put Tennessee in the contender list, but Georgia I'm going to hold as an incomplete because I with that much turnover, I just need to see a little bit more.
So I think Georgia is a contender, but I have something interesting coming later in the show. But I do think they are a contender just because I think like Clemson, even though they struggled against Missouri, they struggled against Kent State for a little bit. I think you line up against anybody and Georgia can beat anybody any Saturday. That's why I kind of give them a little bit more leeway over Michigan just because they've proven it. Year in and year out. But kind of moving on to the college football playoff picks. So this week we're going to do a little bit different. We're not going to rattle off all of our 6 individually. We're going to go tick for tack, and we'll start from 6 down. Okay. So I will go ahead and go first. Let me pull up my list. I will go ahead and go first. So at my number 6 spot, I have Clemson. Last week I had them at 5. I have them at 6 this week. The reason
so you moved
being,
them down after a top 10 win.
I moved them down. The reason why I moved them down, as a Clemson fan, I'm tired of seeing. So I predicted last week a 38-13 victory. I want to say over, obviously Syracuse is undefeated, but I'm very tired of seeing these close games. It's just not. I get that our team is relatively young offensively, but we need to. I've said this week in and week out on this podcast. Every game we are in the first quarter sleeping, in the second quarter sleeping, then halftime everybody wakes up and took an energy drink in the second half, and now all of a sudden we can score 17 points in the fourth quarter to win. And obviously, like I said earlier in the show, I think regardless of if Cade plays or if DJ plays, we win that game. But I have them moved down from 5 to 6 solely based off of the way we're eking out these wins, and it doesn't look as dominant compared to the other teams. Now, I'm not going to. It's hard because we have 3 top 25 wins, and Syracuse did not lose this year. So I try not to harp on Clemson so much, but it's like at some point you need a big win. Like you need a dominating win to kind of show the committee, to show the rest of the country, okay, this team is a force. But as of right now, the way they're kind of eking by, that's why I have them moved back from 5 to 6 opposed to last week.
Okay.
So who's your number 6 this week?
So my number 6 is going to be, I'm going to put, honestly, TCU there. And it's tough. I thought about them at 5 and 4. So I have a question of if it's just, hey, the Big 12 isn't great. Like I said, they're playing a bunch of close games, but I still give them credit for winning a bunch of close games. They have some ranked wins. But I think the Big 12 is just a very mediocre conference, and they're beating other mediocre teams. They just happen to be the best of the mediocres. But again, to me, hey, you win the games against the people lined up in front of you every Saturday. You deserve a shot. So I'm going to put them as 6 for right now.
Okay. At my number 5, I have Alabama. Even though they lost that game, I think beating number 24 Mississippi State handedly was an eye-opener for me, because I think right now, even though Clemson is undefeated, I think if Alabama and Clemson played, Alabama would be a heavy favorite. I think they may be a 10-point favorite against Clemson if they were to play tomorrow. So, like I said, I'm not going to be biased in this case. I do think Alabama would be at number 5 if the committee went in and made rankings today. I think they'd have them higher than Clemson, even though Clemson is undefeated. They play number 18 LSU in 2 weeks after the bye, and they play number 15 Ole Miss. I think if they win out, they can end up in the top 3, even though they have a loss in going into the conference championship week.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely have a path. So my number 5, I have Michigan. And I think it's really kind of, as I thought about this, it's really kind of what you said. They have one quality win, but I don't think we know what Penn State is. I think we'll know more about Penn State this weekend, right? If Penn State, like you said, if they can hang with Ohio State, then you say, hey, that Michigan win was quality. If Ohio State kind of beats them down, even in the similar fashion, even if it's then you say, hey, maybe that win wasn't as quality. And then that puts them back in the, hey, they have no quality wins category. So for right now, I have Michigan number 5.
That was your number 5, right?
That was 5, yeah.
My number 4 is Michigan. For everything you said, I had him at number 4 last week. I think, like I said, it's going to come down to how Ohio State looks against Penn State this week. I think if Ohio State wins but struggles, then that shows that Michigan is a good football team. Obviously, styles make fights. So it's hard to say that solely based off of the common opponent. But, I mean, it still is going to tell a story regardless. So I think it'll come down to how Ohio State looks against Penn State. Who does Michigan play this week? They have a bye.
I think Michigan has a bye, yeah.
Oh, no. They play Michigan State.
Oh,
they play Michigan State this week. I don't know how good Michigan
And
State
Michigan
is
State
this
has
year.
been Michigan
Yeah,
State
they're
is
not.
horrible this year.
Yeah, they haven't really been good this year. So I think they're going to end up winning until they end up playing Ohio State. So ultimately, Michigan's going to stay in these talks. But I have them at number 4.
All right, and my number 4, I have Clemson. Yeah, I have them as the lower team simply because of the closeness of the games. But kind of what you said, you got to give Clemson credit. I think they have the most ranked wins of any team in the top 25. So Clemson and Dabo just have been in these situations so many times and they continue to find a way to win. And that deserves credit. Now, like you said, I would like to see them dominate some of these games a little bit more, right? I don't think Syracuse Clemson should be a one possession game. I don't think Wake Forest Clemson should be a one possession game. I think these are teams that just Clemson should out recruit and then out dominate in the trenches. But they continue to win. I got to put them in. I have them at number 4.
Okay, I have a feeling we're going to have the same exact top 4, but my number 3 is Tennessee.
Yeah, I think the rest of the teams are pretty.
Okay, my number 3 is Tennessee. They had a big win, obviously, against UT Martin this week. But I think with them looking at the remaining schedule, they play number 19 Kentucky this week. I think that's going to be a really good game. I think that's going to be a good one. And then they play at Georgia. And they have number 25 South Carolina, who has somehow snuck into the top 25. And Clemson plays them at the end of the year. And then they play Mizzou and Vandy. So I think I have them at number 3 just because I don't think they're as good as the 2 teams above us or above them. But I think going into obviously not this week's games, but next week, they could have argument number 1 if they pull off that Georgia game. So we'll just have to see.
So I have it the opposite. I have Georgia number 3, and the reason I have Tennessee number 2, and I'll just really give you both of those. And the reason being is at the end of the day, I can continue to doubt Tennessee, but Tennessee has the best win in the top 25. And I don't think Georgia, outside of smacking Oregon, but again, I think the Pac-12 is down, and I'm not really confident. And even though Oregon's seeming to run the table, the rest of the Pac-12, I don't think that's a good conference. I think Tennessee has the best win, so I have them above Georgia. I had Georgia at 5 last week. I do move them up to 3, but I have Tennessee ahead of them only because they do have a very quality win on the field. And again, this is all going to get settled when they play each other.
In 2 weeks, yeah.
Yeah.
So at mine, did I say okay? So my number 2 is Georgia, and my number 1 is Ohio State. I've stuck with so last week I think I had Georgia number 1. I'm pretty sure I had Georgia number 1. I flip-flopped them. I flip-flopped them this week just because Ohio State. I thought the Iowa game was going to be a little bit closer. I don't know why they were saying. I mean, I get CJ Stroud threw a pick early, and he fumbled. I think it was like a sack fumble or something.
He did.
A lot of narrative of their offense is struggling. I don't really buy into that. If you want to see a struggling offense, go watch Clemson play. So we'll just leave it at that. I think with Georgia's win against Vanderbilt, they won 55-0. Vanderbilt, I don't think is even comparable to Iowa. That's the only reason why I had Ohio State jump Georgia this week. But I think if these teams keep winning games, I think constantly every week I'm kind of be moving teams around just based off of a recency bias. Because I get that Georgia beat Oregon handedly in the beginning of the year. It was the first game of the season. So like my dad said, it's kind of hard to judge that game without knowing that. I mean, without kind of just batting an eye at that, because that was Bo Nix's first time in the offense. Obviously Oregon is clicking now. So it's kind of hard to just say Oregon lost to them or Georgia beat them. That's the best one in the top 10. Even though, I mean, Tennessee beat Alabama with Bryce Young. Yep. I get that he was still kind of hurt and everything, but that Oregon win is good. But I still take into account that it was the first game of the year. Now, if Oregon continues to win, like we were talking about earlier, and ends in the top 6, then that win could be a teller to how good the Georgia football team is. Obviously, let's say even if they lose to Tennessee, I mean, they could still say, how could I be behind Oregon? Because let's say Oregon wins out and ends up number 7 or 8. If Georgia were to lose to Tennessee, how could you put Georgia behind Oregon after they beat them by 50?
Yeah, you drummed them. Yeah.
So I think that's going to be a teller in that situation. But obviously you have Ohio State at number 1. Do you have anything to say about the Buckeyes?
Yeah, I mean, so I can understand the hesitancy to put them at number one. I can understand people who don't agree because, to be honest, we don't have a quality win yet. But when that team is humming, you remember what the Iowa game, Iowa, a top defense, we scored 54 points on, and people said the offense looked bad. CJ comes out, throws 4 touchdowns in the second half, and still is pulled early in the fourth quarter on a day that you would say that our offense played bad. I mean, it's tough to match the explosiveness. You remember they're doing all this. Jackson Smith-Njigba, I think, had 2 catches and then tweaked something again. Just the number of receivers. We didn't run the ball at all this week. So it's and the defense has honestly looked much better, much improved from last week. Now, again, all of that can change this week. I have been kind of holding Ohio State on that pedestal. And this game is going to be the real tell. The Penn State game is going to be the tell if it's deserving or if they should be knocked off their mantle a little bit.
Definitely. I think that's going to be the game of the week. I think that was going to be a really good game. Moving into the final stretch of this week's episode. I know this is a little bit shorter of an episode, but we actually have 2 episodes coming for you guys this week. So be on the lookout for that. But moving on to our final stretch, we're going to go ahead and predict the top 25 games this week. And there are a lot of top 25 games this week. So I think there's going to be a lot of meaningful football being played. But starting out, I'll let you start this one off. Mizzou at number 25, South Carolina.
Yeah, so you mentioned South Carolina sneaking into the top 25. I don't know how. Spencer Rattler has not looked great this year, but they keep winning. They are 5-2. I think there's a little SEC bias there. I think there's teams that are better, but I think Mizzou's really bad. So I think South Carolina is going to beat Mizzou. I'm gonna have this game 42-25.
That's crazy. I don't know how we get so close. So I agree. I don't know how they're in the top 25 either. And now, if I have it my way, I want them to win out, so they're a top 15 team when we play them. So it makes us look better. But I have South Carolina winning 44-27. So really close as far as that one goes. Moving on to the next one, Virginia Tech at number 24, NC State. So I'll take this one. Mm-hmm. I think this game is going to be – I don't think it's going to be a blowout, but NC State's defense is really good. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I do think NC State wins because I think Virginia Tech is really bad. They haven't been good in a long time, and I think overall college football is better when they are good. They're just one of those kind of just traditional teams in the ACC that I want to see good again, even though obviously I'm a Clemson fan, but I do want to see them good again. I think this game is going to be NC State 28, Virginia Tech 17.
Yeah, and we talked about NC State losing Leary, and obviously that affected them when they played Syracuse. But Virginia Tech, like you said, is bad this year. They're 2-5. So I think NC State's defense can kind of carry the way this game. So I think it's gonna be low scoring. I'm gonna go 20-7.
20-7. Okay. Moving on to the next one. You got this one. Pitt at number 21, North Carolina.
Yeah. So I liked Pitt early in that West Virginia game. It looked good. I like Slavis, but they're 4-3 now. UNC with May has looked really good. I'm going UNC in this game. I think just they seem to look like the better team, and I think their quarterback situation has played out better this season. I think this is going to be a high scoring game. I'm going to go 45-31.
Okay, so you have UNC winning, though.
UNC winning, yes.
Okay, I have UNC winning as well. I think Drake May's playing phenomenal. I actually have a friend who's a UNC fan, and he's a troll. I'm not even going to name him. I'm not even going to name him because I didn't know that was UNC. I'm not even going to name him. He's not even a real UNC fan, and it's going to piss me off even just talking about it. I shouldn't even brought it up. But he's a UNC fan. But he's barked at me. He's actually in the army, but he's in Germany. And he's barked at me. You don't know him. You don't know him. But
this isn't what I think.
You don't know him. Yeah, you don't know him. You don't want to know him. But he his name is Zach, by the way. What up, Zach? But basically, He's barked at me anytime I talk about Clemson. He'll just go in there and troll about North Carolina. He did it last year when North Carolina had their little run. He's doing it this time. Like I said, he's in Germany, so the timing's messed up. So he'll hit me at 3 a.m. and say something and just bugging me. But I got North Carolina winning this game as well, 34-24. I think Drake May has a really good game. They got Josh Downs, a receiver. I think it's going to be lower scoring, but I think it's going to be a closer game than what people expect. So I got him winning 34-24. Moving on to the next one. Did you go first this last one, or did I go first?
I went first. You just finished.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and do this one. Number 20, Cincinnati at UCF. I think this is going to be another really good game. I have Cincy winning 40-34. I have a high-scoring game, but I do have it kind of close. Cincinnati 6-1, UCF is 5-2. It's big conference implications for both teams. Yep. So I think it's going to be a really good game. ESPN has it 60-40 percentage-wise, so I think it's going to be a really good game.
Yeah, this is a tough one. UCF just lost to Eastern Carolina. I have a USC fan. Shout out to my homeboy Jace. But I think
UCF fan, not USC. You said USC.
You know what I mean. UCF, Central Florida. But obviously I'm from Cincinnati. If you didn't know that, I'm from Cincinnati. And so I got to go Cincy. I'm going to go Cincy. I'm going to go 40-27.
Okay. 40-27. Moving on to the next one. Before you even start this one off, I want to give a shout out to Justin Langdon, and I want to give a shout out to Alex Corbin, because in episode 1, I talked crazy about Nebraska when we were talking about Illinois. So if you guys made it this far in the video, both of you guys, I want you guys to listen to both of our takes here. But I'll let you kick this one off. Number 17, Illinois at Nebraska.
Yeah, so obviously Nebraska's played much better since the coach change. But Illinois has been something under Blima with Chase Brown. So I got to go Illinois. Sorry, Alex. I've known Alex since he was a little kid. So sorry. I know this may hurt a little bit, but I think Nebraska still just they're playing better. Hopefully they're on an upward trajectory, but I don't think they're good yet. I mean, I got to give Illinois their props, right? If I would have picked this at any other time, probably in the season, just based off of names, I would have picked Nebraska. But I got to go Illinois in this game. I think again, this is going to be kind of a in the trenches game, so I'm going to go 28-17.
Okay, I have Illinois winning this game as well. Sorry, Alex and Justin. But I said that they were going to win 2 weeks ago if they were going to win this game. So I'm not going to change my stance on it now. I got them winning 27-20. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be in the trenches as well, just running the football. I don't know what the weather's like up there. Hopefully it's like an ugly game.
I'm sure it will be, especially in Nebraska as it starts to get into fall.
Are you throwing shade or what?
No, that was you. You made this a whole shade thing.
Oh, man. Okay, moving on to the next one. I think it's my turn to go next. I'm losing count, so I'll just go next.
Yeah.
We got Notre Dame at number 16, Syracuse. I think this one is going to be really good. Based off of the Syracuse that Clemson played last week, I think they're going to show up. They're going to have something to prove this week. But with that being said, I think Notre Dame is going to pull this game off. I think they win 32-27 in a really good game. It is at Syracuse. But I think Notre Dame, I think they've turned it around a little bit. They started off really bad, obviously losing a big game early, but I think they win this game, and they continue to kind of bolster their way to the top 25 by the end of the year.
Well, so what I'm gonna say is no.
You are so lame.
No, Syracuse showed me something.
Loser.
I did not believe in them going into that Clemson game. That defense looked for real. Them boys play with heart. I think Notre Dame is, and I love Marcus Freeman. Obviously, he's an Ohio State alum. The coach at Notre Dame. But I don't think they have the talent yet. I think they're some years away for replenishing and being the Notre Dame that we know. So, like I said, Syracuse showed me something. I'm going to go Syracuse in this game. And honestly, still kind of based on what I saw early, I'm going to go Syracuse big. I'm going to go 40-17 because I think Syracuse is ready to get back at it, right? They're ready to show that they were not a fluke. And they're going to come out fired up. especially when you have a name like Notre Dame and you're trying to show that, hey, we're legit. We are legit. We belong here. Clemson's a good team, but we just lost to a good team. 40-17. Watch, listen to
You
this.
lucky I don't have a
Hear
no
me now.
buzzer.
Hear me
That's
now.
crazy.
Hear me now.
40-17 is crazy. All right, moving on to the next one. I'll let you kick this one off. Number 15, Ole Miss at Texas A&M.
So, Texas A&M, I do not know what's going on in Texas A&M. It just looks bad. Yeah, now 3-4. Again, and we talked about the recruiting classes the last 2 years being great, but something is not working there. Ole Miss obviously is coming off a loss themselves, but I think Ole Miss is just a better football team. I think they're going to get back to that running game with that two-headed monster they have in the backfield. I think Jackson Dart will just kind of play game manager, and I think they're going to win a grounded out game. I got this game 35-20 Ole Miss.
I have A&M winning this game. I think, hear me out. Listen now. Don't make that face. No. Okay. I think the reason A&M win this game, I think it's going to be very high scoring. But I think the reason they win this game, I think, what is it called? Kyle Field? Are they called Kyle Field?
That's what
I think that is one of the hardest places to play. Yeah. And I think that's going to play a big factor. The 12th man is going to play a big factor for them. I think they win 41-35. And I think they go up, and I think Ole Miss tries to rally late, and then the defense ends up getting a stop. I think they win 41-35 though. But I could see Ole Miss winning the game as well. I think it'll be close, but I do think A&M wins at home against Ole Miss. I'm not an Ole Miss believer and that's just my stance. I'm not a believer in Ole Miss. Moving on to the next one, Stanford at number 12, UCLA. I'll go ahead and go first on this one. I think this one's going to be not a blowout, but I think UCLA is going to dominate this game early. I think DTR is going to have a really good game. I know he was in the Heisman conversation for a little while. They lost the game, but I still think he could get himself back in that conversation. Depending on how he plays the stretch of the season. I have UCLA winning 38-17.
I think you missed the game, and that's the game we're going to.
Number 13?
Number 14, the game we're going to this week.
Oh, I did miss that game. We'll talk about that one, though.
Okay. But in this game, I think Stanford, again, another team just not playing up to their normal standard. UCLA, while they did take a loss at Oregon, I think they're going to be anxious to get back and prove that, again, they are legit. I have them winning big as well. I have this game 40-24.
All righty. And we'll kind of spin back. So for those of you that don't know, well, nobody knows, actually. Nobody watches. Well, the guy you'll see in the next episode that we're dropping here in a little bit, he knows, and my close friends know. But my dad actually lives in Florida. I live in Washington, so we're on different sides of the country. He's flying out here. He'll actually be here the day this video comes out, so he will be here. We're going to a Portland Trailblazers game, so we'll post some content from there. And then we're actually going to this next game, which is number 14, Utah at Washington State. How do you feel about that game?
Yeah, no, I'm excited, obviously, to go. Never been to up in the great Northwest. Never been up to a Washington State game. So I'm excited to see the atmosphere. I think Utah wins. I like Cam Rising. I like what they did and what they look like. Now, they have dropped some games. But I think this is going to be a very good game, and I hope it's a very good game. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. And I'm going to go 56-49. I saw that Utah defense just kind of get shredded by USC, even though they won. So I'm hoping for the scoreboard to get lit up and a lot of excitement in the game. So, again, 56-49, I have Utah winning.
So, as my dad said, I did miss this game, so I don't even have a prediction. So I'm just going off the top of the dome with this one. But kind of just looking at it, Cameron Ward, he's their quarterback for Washington State. He has 2,000 yards passing, 16 touchdowns, 8 picks. I hope it's a high-scoring game. My wife actually went to Washington State. She's an alum from there. So I'm going to go with the underdog. I'm going to go with the Cougars. I'm going to say 48-45 in an overtime win. That's my prediction. So I got Washington State winning that game. Right, moving back on to the next one. I'll go first on this one. We got number 10 Wake Forest at Louisville. So we briefly talked about the Demon Deacons earlier in the show, and we talked about if they were to run the table, what is their ceiling? I'm going to stump that right now. I think Malik Cunningham is arguably, don't make that face. Malik Cunningham is the truth. Him in that offense, he's nasty. Do not make that face.
Go ahead.
I have Malik Cunningham and the Louisville Cardinals pulling off the upset at home 31-27 against Wake Forest.
So at the beginning of the season, Malik Cunningham was a lot of people's Heisman sleeper, right? A guy who could have made some noise. I think he just hasn't lived up to that. He hasn't had a great season, especially passing. Now running the ball, he's done well, but passing, he hasn't looked like the guy that we thought he was going to look like coming into this season. And Hartman has. Hartman has been legit the entire season, really kind of led that Wake Forest team this whole season. I think Wake Forest continues to roll. I don't think Malik Cunningham is who we thought he was at the beginning of the year. I'm going to go Wake Forest. I don't think it's going to be big. I'm going to go Wake Forest 35-21.
So just to kind of let you guys know this, I didn't look at this when I made my prediction. So they have Wake Forest as a 4-point favorite, and the matchup predictor has Wake Forest winning 51%, Louisville 49%. I think that's the close. That might be the closest odds,
especially a top 10 team versus an unranked team.
Yeah, that's really close. But moving on to the next one, I'll let you do this one. Number 9, Oklahoma State at number 22, Kansas State. I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is just another one of those Big 12 games where it just anything can happen. They're going to come out and score a lot of points. We talked about Sanders. We talked about Adrian Martinez, the transfer at Kansas State from Nebraska. But I have Oklahoma State. Again, I think this is Big 12, so you throw out any sentiment of defense, and they're just going to put up a bunch of points. So I have this 51-45. Like all Big 12 games, I think it's going to be close. But I think Oklahoma State, just when it comes down to it, has a little bit more and pulls this one out.
Okay, so we agree on this one. I think Oklahoma State wins this game as well. I have it 45-35, though. I think it'll be a 10-point win. I don't think Kansas State is that good. I think Oklahoma State is decent as well, but I don't think Oklahoma State can hang with the top teams. They are number 9, obviously, but I don't think you put them in there with any top 5 team, they get blown out. That's just my opinion. But I got them 45-35. I think Spencer Sanders is going to be the difference. He's going to throw a lot of yards, a lot of touchdowns, and hopefully he doesn't turn the ball over too much. Yeah. Moving on to the next one, we got number 8 Oregon at California. I think with this game, it's going to be dominant. I think Oregon is going to continue to win with hopes that chaos ensues above them and they can somehow sneak in with that 4 spot. I got them winning 52-24 this week against Cal.
Yeah, at this point, Oregon is the Pac-12's full hope. So I think the whole Pac-12 has to be rooting for Oregon. I guess you still got USC in there as well as a possibility to get to the college football playoff. So they kind of have to run the table. And I think I'll pick them to run the table. I think, they just look better since that Georgia game. Bo Nix seems to have much better chemistry with the receivers. The running game is going. So I'm going to pick Oregon big. I think Cal's down a little bit. So I'm going to pick Oregon 40-21.
All righty, moving on to the next one. There's a lot of ranked games. This is going to be a good week of college football, hopefully. Moving on to the next one, you got this one, number 7 TCU at West Virginia.
Yeah, so it's tough for me to say I'm not a believer in TCU. They have a veteran quarterback, Dugan, and they continue to find ways to win. West Virginia is a team that can beat them, and I'm going to pick the upset. I think West Virginia is going to pull it out. I think it's going to be close. I think TCU has just been living on the edge too many games. They were down in just about all of their quality wins at some point in time. They were down. I feel like you can only play with fire so much. I think West Virginia has the firepower to beat them. I am going to pick the upset here. I'm picking West Virginia to beat TCU. I think the game stays close. I think they're able to pull it out late because I think just TCU can't continue to live on the edge like that. I'm picking West Virginia 35-31.
So you have the upset. I have a TCU blowout here.
Oh,
I think TCU handles West Virginia, and I think they actually – this game, I think so with how Clemson – and mind you, I don't know if you knew this, but the college football committee is after this week is their first.
The first.
Or I'm sorry, no. After I think November 2nd is their first show. I know
So,
it's on a
well, that's
I know
after
it's on
this
a-
week because this week
Okay.
is the 29th. So it will be before. So it's after this week that Tuesday.
Okay, yeah. So November 1st, it might have been. I think if TCU blows West Virginia out, I think there is a possibility where not only Alabama is higher than Clemson, but I think TCU could be higher than Clemson. And I think Clemson could be at number 6 or 7. Maybe not Alabama, but definitely TCU, especially because we'll have a bye. And the last thing that the committee will remember is they barely beat Syracuse and they barely beat NC State. But not to talk about Clemson anymore. I'm sorry, guys. But going back to I had to throw it in there. But going back to TCU, I think they win 48-20. I think this is a blowout win. I think this is going to be a statement for them. With hopes again, just like Oregon, to find a way in the playoff. And I don't really think TCU needs chaos to ensue above them. I think if they run the table and win the Big 12 championship, I think right now it's hard to not put them in, but especially we're looking at it this way. If you have a undefeated Ohio State, an undefeated Clemson, an undefeated TCU, and an undefeated SEC team, I think those 4 teams get in. But then if it's really, I mean, unless Alabama goes in and wins the SEC championship game, and then that one lost team is Georgia or Tennessee, then it's either TCU or one of them, and that's going to be really hard to do. And I think it'll be hard because TCU, if they run the table, they're going to have a lot of notable wins. And Georgia, let's say that they run the table and lose to Alabama, their only real notable win is going to be Tennessee and Florida.
Yeah, Florida.
Yeah, and everybody else.
Well, you still the Oregon win.
Oh, and Oregon, you're right, and Oregon. So I think that'll be a conversation to be had. But until that point, I think TCU is like I said, they don't really need chaos above them until maybe conference championship week. They might need some crazy stuff to happen. But I like TCU by 28 in this week. Did you already won that one? Okay, my turn. Michigan State at number 4, Michigan. I think I was down on Michigan. I'm still kind of down on them. I don't think they lose this game. I think they win pretty big, 48-20. So I have the same score as the TCU game. Then they win 48-20 here. But again, I think it's going to show with the Ohio State game how good they really are in comparison to a common opponent. But I have them winning 48-20 here. I think Blake Corum has another big game against Michigan State.
Yeah, Michigan State won this game last year. That was the Ken Walker big. I think he went for like 500 yards. He didn't go for 500, but he had a ridiculous game. He did have 5 touchdowns rushing. Obviously, he's moved on. He's playing with the Seahawks. Michigan State has not looked good this year. They are not that same team. They have problems on defense. And I think this is not one of those. This is a rivalry game, but I don't think this is one of those fairy tales. I think Michigan, again, just like they've done week in and week out with inferior teams, I think they're going to beat them up in the trenches. I think they win 35-7.
35-7. Alrighty, moving on to the next one. Number 19, Kentucky at number 3, Tennessee. You can go ahead and do this one first.
Yeah, so like every game with Tennessee, I think this is another litmus test, right? This is one of the 2 games that Tennessee has left. We'll really get to see, are they as good as they've kind of shown themselves to be so far this season? And I think they are. I think I have to give that receiver core the credit they deserve. I have to give Henry Hooker the credit they deserve. I like Will Levis at Kentucky. I like that Kentucky team, but I think Tennessee is for real. And we'll talk about the Georgia game later, that I think that's the only possible loss they'll have left outside of an SEC championship. But I have Tennessee winning this game. I do think that Kentucky keeps it close early, and I think this is going to be high scoring just because of the quarterbacks and then the lack of defense to me for both teams. So I have this one 45-31.
45-31. Okay, I have Tennessee winning this game as well. I think if it's an away game, I think the game is really close. I'd probably still favor Tennessee in that situation, but I have it 41-28. I think Hendon Hooker has another really good game to really compete with CJ Stroud for the Heisman. I still think CJ Stroud is the favorite right now. But I think if Hooker wins this game, it's another ranked opponent, and then if he wins next game, like you said last week, he has a real argument for it. I have them winning 41-28 this week though, and then next week will kind of be his Heisman coming out party, if you will, if they win next week. Moving on to this one, I'll do this one first. Number 2 Ohio State at number 13 Penn State. We've been talking about this game what seems like the entire show. At least I have. I keep bringing them up to compare with Michigan. I think this game is going to really show a lot. As I've been saying all episode, I think it's going to show a lot. I do have Ohio State winning, so take a deep breath, relax. You're looking at me like you about to come through this damn screen. Relax. I do have Ohio State winning. I have them winning a close game, though. I don't have them blowing Penn State out. I have them winning 38-30. I think it's close. I think even Penn State may have the lead in the second half. And I think C.J. Stroud, like Hendon Hooker, I think he has a good game, and he has his Heisman moment. And I think Marvin Harrison, Jackson Smith, I don't know if Jackson Smith is playing, but Julian Fleming, I think they're going to have a good second half. And I think 38-30, I mean, I want to go with a wider margin, but I just feel like because at Penn State, I think it's going to be a really close one. But I think I like C.J. Stroud and what he's shown so far. So I'm going to go 38-30 Buckeyes.
Yeah, so this is it, right? This is the game for me as an Ohio State fan and for the world to really see what Ohio State's about, right? We already seen what Penn State did against Michigan, and this is a top 15 team. At the end of the day, I don't think Penn State is for real. However, they have notoriously played Ohio State very close. So in the same kind of way, I think we win by 10, but I don't think this is. I think it's a 15-point margin of the betting line. I don't think we cover that. I think Penn State, especially in Beaver Stadium, is going to be rocking. And then I think they have some players. I think they have some players that can give us some problems. We're going to see what this defense is about. But I think at the end of the day, Ohio State just has too many players and they're able to pull this out. I have it 35-25.
All right, moving on to our last game. I'll let you start this one. Florida at number 1 Georgia.
So I'll actually possibly be at this game as well. So I know we talked about me being on the West Coast. I fly back in Friday night, have tickets to the Florida-Georgia game. So we'll see how I feel with jet lag and everything else. I think Florida's really down. I think, again, we talked about Malik Cunningham kind of not being the player that we thought he would be at the beginning of the season. I'll say the same thing about Antonio Richardson.
Anthony Richardson.
Anthony Richardson. I don't even know his name because I think we had talked about him possibly being a Heisman candidate, and he is not that. I think that Georgia defense and Georgia just has enough players. I think it may be close early, but I think Georgia pulls away late, and I think they pull away pretty big. I'm going to go 42-21.
Okay, so can you do me a favor really quick?
Yes.
Take that no buzzer, and I want you to move it for a second.
Move it? Okay, go ahead.
I want you to throw it behind your head for a second.
If you say something crazy.
Listen up, guys. To end this episode, I'm telling you this, and you're hearing this first. You're hearing it right now.
This is going to be the take of the week.
Listen to me. Number 1 Georgia is going to fall this week. And they're going to fall. Listen, and they're going to fall in heartbreak fashion. The Florida Gators are going to go in to Athens, Georgia.
This game is in Jacksonville.
Oh, well, even better.
Yeah, neutral site. Always neutral site.
Okay, well, even better. They're going to dominate. They're not going to dominate. I lied. They're going to win 34-30. And I think Anthony Richardson is going to run the ball, throw the ball. Shoot, he might kick the ball.
There's no way you believe this.
Florida is going to beat Georgia this week. And listen, you guys can clip this, post it over Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Florida is going to win this game.
There is no way.
Florida is going to win this game. They're going to win this ball game. Do you remember when Auburn won on the kick 6?
Yes.
And do you remember the announcer? Auburn's going to win the football game. That's how That's how they're going to sound when Florida pulls this game off.
There's no way you believe that deep in your heart.
Hold on. Hold on.
I see Florida.
Florida wins 34-30.
Oh my goodness.
Florida's going to win this football game. Call me crazy. But next week, when we sit down and do this podcast, I'm going to start off the episode yelling, "Go Gators," with my Percy Harvin jersey on. Florida is going to win this football game.
There is no way they win this game.
34-30.
No way.
And mind you, they're a 23-point underdog. Put your bets in now.
I'd be willing to bet good money that Florida does not win this game. I'm not going to say they don't keep it close.
Okay,
I've seen Florida. I went to the Florida-Missouri game. That offense does not look good. I can't rock with you. I can't rock with you here, son.
They're gonna win the football game. But that's how we're gonna end the show. Let us know what your hot take is. Y'all heard mine. It's not gonna be a very hot take when we come in next week in Florida.
That is the hot. Listen, if you're right, you look like a genius.
Listen, Anthony Richardson, make your bets. But we will see you guys next week. Until then, peace out, guys.
All right.